There's a lack of trust in the field versus the office. They're coming from different socioeconomic situations, but when you touch them and you get them to say, look, you matter. Yes, you need to
Mm-hmm.
produce. You make a certain amount of money. You need to produce. Let's get those rules right out in the front. But beyond that, I'm going to treat you as a human being. And all I'm asking you to do is treat me back like a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And then let me strategically try to find ways to convince you, because the responsibility is on us, the management side, because they've either learned it a different way or have been mistreated or mistrust. They don't trust you. So you have to work that much more to get them to trust you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Activating Curiosity. I am Ryan Ware, and I'm excited about the conversation today because we get a chance to talk to someone who is leading a construction company that he was part of founding, and he is beginning to think about leadership and something that he's really taken on for quite a while, about how we're really starting to address leadership and look at the industry different. And this conversation will probably go a lot of directions. I have Ed DeAngelis with me. He is the CEO and founder of EDA Contractors in Philadelphia. Hey, Ed, how are you doing?
Good, Ryan. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to have our conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I have gotten a chance to see a lot of the things that you've been working on, and I want you to share it. I definitely don't want to take that away from you. But before we dive into the episode, just tell a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got started into your career and kind of started getting into leading a construction company.
It's probably the age-old story of how I got into it, but my father actually was HVAC contractor. So while I was growing up, I think that was something that I saw. He was in the construction business. But I always like to start with, Ryan, with I think one of my biggest impacts of my life where I was a paperboy. So in Northeast Philadelphia, you would grab a cart, you get papers in it, and you would deliver them. And the reason I say that is there was something entrepreneurial about that back then, where you would get as many papers as you could, you would deliver them, you had customer service, you had collections, you
Hmm.
had managing the money, you had profit and loss, you had so many different things. I dealt with adults because back when I was back in the day, you would pay for your papers,
Hmm.
your bill, and then you would go sell them, and then you would go collect, which is your collections. So the reason I start there is because I think people always say, "How'd you get in construction?" Well, my dad happened to be in construction, and then I think there was an entrepreneurial spirit in me. So then I
Hmm.
went to college. I went to high school. I went to college. I got done college. I got some offers to work in marketing and things of that sort because I went for a degree in marketing, and
Hmm.
I really fell into construction again. I felt comfortable in that place and decided to go work for someone for about 10 years until 1999 when I decided to open up my own firm, which is now called EDA Contractors.
I I love that story. I'm a little bit a little bit excited to probably talk a lot about the paperboy side because I grew up in the having a paper route, and I love how you just described it. We had our own little business, at the age of 11 or whatever.
Yep,
That's when I
I
started. I
was
don't
I
know
was
about you.
11 or 12.
Yeah, and you this idea that you're going as an 11-year-old to try to sell a paper to somebody, but also you might be in a debate about the collection side. And I always tell everybody's like, I learned business from being a paper boy. So I love that you shared that because it's a lost thing in society now. With the digital world, that was an opportunity for people to really, as you said, become an entrepreneur. I wanted.
Ryan, I love talking to paper boys because, and I'm telling you, because I had to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day at that age. If I was late, they were screaming at me. I had
Yep.
people turning the lights off to collect $2. Like, when I'm going up to collect, all of a sudden the lights go off and I'm this seventh
Yep.
grader, or sixth grader, seventh grader going, "Hey, why are you not paying me?" But you
Yep.
learn, and then you learn also how to be nice to people. So
Hmm.
my tips were so much better because I learned that if I'm just kind to people, they
Yeah.
reciprocate to me. And there was always the people who were difficult, but at the end of the day, 80% of them, if you treated them kindly, they treated me kindly. And I think that was a real mark on my, I think, growth to go where I am today.
Yeah. Well, it's such an important story, like you said, that kindness piece, that remembering that we're human, and in those moments, it's like, yes, I need to be kind. You're a young person. I remember that. It was like the amount of plants I helped someone get in the ground to they just needed someone to talk to as I was going around. So it's a bit of humanity, um, that I think, it it's a way for us as younger people to start to connect to others, and I love that you had that as a first job, because I'm assuming that was that foundational piece as you got started. The marketing track is an interesting one as well, because that's all about communication and how you're reaching out to people, and now you're coming back to kind of this area in construction that you learned from, like you said, your father, that kind of was
Correct.
in there. So so Ed, as you got into construction, as you started to develop, was there something that you were noticing based off of, your experiences, your life experiences, and as you're getting into leadership, was there something that you were noticing, like, hey, we're missing as a business or as an industry, and you felt that you needed to really get involved in?
Yes. The thing that I think, and it's so funny because Ryan, you'll appreciate this because you're a paperboy. I did always kind of reflect back. So when I got into construction, the thing that I noticed first was there was such a roughness to it.
Hmm.
And it was actually a great honor to be rougher. It was people who rose up in the businesses were a lot more gruff, and I would say not, I wouldn't say mean. I would just say that it was rewarded for yelling and for doing things differently
Hmm.
in that way. And I really felt like, you know what? I don't have that in me. I think I can be demanding, and even when I was a paper boy, I was demanding. Even when I was working at the other place, I was demanding. But I said, you know what? There might be a different way to change this. I'm not saying that I changed it, but I said I looked around and I said, how can I be different? How can I see whatever industry you're in? How can I change this to be somewhat different? And the first thing I did was I would dress nice. And and I go back to even schooling. When I was a kid in school, my parents would make sure my hair was combed, my tie was right. I went to a Catholic school, you know, and there was a sister, Naomi. I'll never forget her because she was a fourth grade. She was the most frightening individual. God bless her. I hope she's passed so she doesn't hear this. Not that she would. She was mean, but she would praise me for being put together. Like my hair was combed, and it impacted me. And I said, you know what? I can take this and say, why do we have to dress like we are actually working on the jobs? Because I wasn't a physical worker like the amazing men and women that are out in the field. Like, I'm a business person. Let me see if I can address a certain way. And then it was also maybe I could just use the manners that my parents taught me and just say please and thank you. And could you please do this? And is there any way you could, there's a big difference. Now, I'm a young person, so I'm really an apprentice, but I think I saw that the industry was male dominated, and very rough and intimidating. And if I didn't have my father who was in the business, I don't know if I would have made it because I would have been scared to enter into this industry because it was so, rough and tumble, but it was so huge and it was so interesting. And there were so many smart people that were building these amazing buildings, and the amount of time and effort and thought that goes in and work to do this. I was just fascinated that maybe there was another way to kind of bridge that gap.
I think one of those areas that you just discussed is really that imagery, right? Whether it's personal imagery or it's the imagery of the industry and how somebody kind of is representing it. And like you said, it's taking pride in one's appearance, whether it's a teacher that you remember that maybe wasn't as kind as could be, but in that moment you recognize like there was value in the way you were kind of presenting yourself as a young person within the industry. Uh, you mentioned this several times, the roughness of the industry, and that it's imagery that is projected, and I've noticed it throughout my career as well. I came from the architecture side, and yet every time I stepped on the project, it was really that personality of the superintendent drove a lot of the way things were going to happen on to the project site. And superintendents have like a tremendous role to play in every aspect of building. And with all of the pressure and all of those things that go on. But I did notice like, hey, that rough and tough, a lot of it came from it was to one up. It was almost like a one up the next person to be even come off more tough than the other person, or to be what seems sometimes rude and angry or mean about something. um and I can't say that's holistic. I did not see that all the way through. There are definitely people within the trades that didn't come off that way, but I can see as a young person kind of trying to come in and see that image, you're not going to want to last long in that environment. You're going to want to see that environment evolve into like being more human, as you're discussing. So let me ask you this then. Once you went through that experience, once you saw that and you continued on in your career, how were you sort of stacking these life experiences into the way you wanted to lead, into the type of leader you wanted to be, and how you're looking at it with your current team?
You know, y- y- you hit on it. I mean, look, the reality of it is I adapted in some ways also to do kind of like that, like to survive. So when I started my own business, I can't tell you that who I was then and who I am now are completely
Mhm,
two different people. And I learned that I think the most important part for me was to understand that the people that I had to serve really were the human beings that work for us.
mhm,
And this human being, probably in year 6 or 7, was grinding and pushing so hard and was so that I got to a point where I couldn't get off the floor. I had two
mhm,
little kids. I was struggling. I was successful. My business was booming, but I was pushing so hard. And I had a family that I cared for deeply. And it just kind of just came to a stop. And I didn't know it was coming. It just happened. So that personal experience said, you know what? It's because I'm fighting myself on being me. And
mm,
and I think what I did then is I did a lot of research to understand, but I was petrified to lose the success of my business. And that transition, that allowed me to go, you know what? I can do it differently and be successful. And
mhm,
and I can treat people, I talk about it now, humanity as a strategy. But the first person I was really talking to when I talk about humanity as a strategy was me.
mm,
How do I treat myself better? Because I was a grinder. I was a paper boy. I was a soccer player. I learned how to grind. I could outwork anybody. I felt like I wasn't the most talented, but I will always say that I could put the most effort out. But then I had to find that balance.
mhm,
And when that happened, and I did the research to say that there's other ways to do this business. So it wasn't just, appearance. It was also about how are you going to treat your people? What strategy are you going to have to help them have an experience by working with you that will make their lives better? Because I need to make my life better because my family was more important to me than my business, but my own health was more important to both because I couldn't do either if I didn't have my own health. And I think that put me on a road of then self-reflecting and understanding who I was, and that allowed me, it just opened up the whole world. That myopic belief of how I'm going to be in the business and construction, and seeing these great leaders doing it a different way, a way that I don't think I can do because
Hmm.
it's not me. I go, can I? Let me go in this path, and I didn't have enough leaders in construction who were going down that path. So I had to go outside of the construction industry, go to Southwest Airlines, go to Zappos,
Hmm.
and read about these places and say, you know what? Construction is, we can do, if you can sell sneakers, if you can sell coffee, if you can, like, and you can, and a rough business, I think we could do the same.
I mean, it's powerful to explain the life experience that you have of on one side, everything from a perspective looks very, very
Amazing.
successful.
Yep.
And on the other side, you as a human are struggling for balance. You're not feeling your authentic self. Like something has thrown you, into an area of like, if I don't put my mask on first, I can't save anyone else next to me.
Yes.
Sort of approach. And that self-awareness, right? That to have that self-awareness and that emotional kind of intelligence to be able to take a step back and pause for a moment, realizing that if I don't solve this for myself, I can't solve it for anyone else. But this is what might be the most costly and detrimental thing, not just for the business, but for my family and for myself. So I appreciate you sharing that because I think a lot of times we don't share that kind of stuff in construction, and the AEC industry as a whole. Like we might with our closest relationships, they might recognize it or show it. And I think one of those things that as we work with developing leaders and wanting to become leaders, it's like, how much should you share with
Right.
with others, like when you are struggling? But if you can't be authentic self and not take that pause moment to step back and analyze it, then you're not being true to them anyway. You're not being true to yourself, you're not being true to your team. So
Correct.
so talk a little bit about then that you go through this moment then, and now you're studying, you're doing a lot of reading, self-reflection, you're trying to understand like, hey, I don't have to be like others in the industry. I could still have success while feeling in balance. And as you start to work with your company and with other leaders in your team, like were there obstacles that you had for yourself, like in your own mind, as well as sort of obstacles and barriers that you sort of saw come up repeatedly as you were beginning this journey, this humanity as a strategy approach to business and leading?
Look, Ryan, I always talk about this because, look, I had to go on my self journey. I mean, while I was doing it, I had to figure out who I, how I wanted to do this and continue to move forward. I did it. I read a tremendous amount. I never really read before this, but
Hmm.
it just allowed me to kind of feel something different and just really get deep into reading and reading about businesses and reading real stories about people being able to do their business differently without giving up the success of the business that they had. So the biggest struggle was introducing this to my team at the time and them looking at me with like nine heads because they were like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Hmm.
Like, Ed, when are we going to talk about the project? I said, we're not going to talk about the project. We're going to talk about creating values for our company. We're going to talk about what a feel do we have? How are we going to build this culture? Like, what is it going to be? I want to work at a place that feels good, and you want to work at a place that feels good. This is a lot of hammer nail here. Yeah, but we're successful. I know, and that's great, but for how long and at what expense is that going to be? And it took a lot of work, but to be fair to them, I'm introducing to them an idea that I've been really diving deep in. Like it was so
Yeah.
personal to me. But once you educate people on a path like this, there's no human being on earth that when you tell them this path and you really explain it to them and you take it from your heart and you do it from your head and you can get challenged and challenged and challenged and you are committed to it, that you will not be able to convince them that their humanity, my humanity, and the people that work out there, our humanity
Mm-hmm.
matters. And it doesn't mean we're soft. It doesn't mean that we're just going to no, it's going to actually make us stronger. And it was so powerful to be at that point. And then to take that to the field was a
Mm-hmm.
whole nother level that we're still on the journey of. There's a lack of trust in the field versus the office. There is that they're coming from different socioeconomic situations. But when you touch them and you get them to say, look, you matter. Yes, you need to
Mm-hmm.
produce. You make a certain amount of money. You need to produce. Let's get those rules right out in the front. But beyond that, I'm going to treat you as a human being. And all I'm asking you to do is treat me back like a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And then let me strategically try to find ways to convince you because the responsibility is on us, the management side, because they've either learned it a different way or have been mistreated or mistrust. They don't trust you. So you have to work that much more to get them to trust you. But I'm going to tell you right now, when they trust you, they are the best people to be on your side. And they come in
Mm-hmm.
all different shapes and sizes. If I showed you some people who are emotionally intelligent, who breathe, who talk about their amygdala and talk about their brain and with their 6'5", their tattoos, or there's a woman who's in the industry who now feels like she belongs. And and that is one of the biggest things that we are missing in this industry. We aren't getting enough people to want to do what we do. And partly is because it can be somewhat intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and then, and I will go into it, but, and beyond that, we have an issue with mental health, suicides, and addiction in our industry. And if we don't do something to help stem that with the amount of dangerous work we're doing and help our people, I can't
Mm-hmm.
be successful without them. They can't be successful without me.
Yeah.
Let's figure out a way to make that better.
Yeah, I completely agree. That is, I'm on a mission and connecting with people that are focused on that mental health side. As you said, it's such a critical part, and we don't have to dive deeper, but if it's part of that humanity side. It's that recognition that humans are going through things. Like it's just part of whom we are. And you started talking about neuroscience and kind of how our brains function. So I want to back up
Mm.
to that initial area of resistance. Something that you said I think is powerful is you had as a leader self-recognition that I have a little bit of a head start in a curse of knowledge of I've been doing this a lot longer than they have and studying it, so it's not new to me, but to them it is.
Correct.
So it sounds like, as you're going through this journey and bringing them kind of into this world, you had to understand you got to slow down, sort of go towards them. You're introducing new language that humans aren't recognizing yet. I mean, we recognize it, but you even said this. It's that you're going from a rough, tough to, I don't always like the term, soft
I don't
skills,
like it either.
right? It's not soft
It's
skills.
not.
It
So the
is,
hardest skill we have is those
yeah,
skills.
exactly. It's the hardest
The
one
hardest.
to master, and it's the hardest one to recognize within ourselves. But once we do, like you said, things change. That experience that they're going to go through, the way they're thinking about it, because it can't just be at the top. It can't be just executives, like, to get the buy-in, and you said something powerful, trust. And that trust is going to come through connection and opening up that space. And we could talk about psychological safety, that space to be human, that space for empathy, the space to allow for conversations while even if the person is now opening up and having that conversation, the leader or the management or the director or whatever that level is, it may be the first time that they're still learning how to interact in that
Yes.
moment.
Correct.
So so when you started this process and you're talking about going from the office to the field, those mental roadblocks that kind of came in, that it was new, I've never seen it. You saw that, hey, I'm going to slow down. open up area for space and psychological safety, educate on that emotional intelligence and what it means. And you shift it into this is actually not a soft skill. It is a very hard skill and something that is necessary. How have you how have you thought about that as you're working through it within your own business, but as an industry as a whole? Like the importance of us to solve it, because you already alluded to this, like we don't solve mental health, but if we don't make this industry have a perception that it's more attractive to the next generation, we're
Yes.
going to have other issues. So talk a little bit about like how you're seeing the things that you're doing, the things that you're learning that this can bring value if we can solve it as an entire industry.
I think the most important asset, and I know everyone talks about it, the most important asset we have is human beings. It's not one, it's 1A, it's 1B, it's 1C, it's 1B. AI is not going to replace human beings in any time soon because human beings
Hmm.
will innovate. They will come up with things that you never thought. So, how do we get to a point where we can clear people's minds? And how do we get them to be clearer and fresher and more innovative in how they're doing things? And that goes from the bricklayer we have or the person in the office, whether it's an estimator. So you also have to, Ryan, one of the biggest things you have to recognize when you go on this journey is you're going to lose people
Hmm.
because there's going to be people in there. Because the reason this is so not a soft skill is because you're going to ask them to touch places in themselves that they don't want to touch. So they
Hmm.
will resist and push back on you. And they may be a good performer. And it has taken me a long time to continue. I've gotten more resilient in saying, look, I'm sorry. This is how we're going to operate. You can't operate the old way. You're going to have to start. I don't mind if you say I have to learn it. That's fine. You'll get a lot of time to learn it, but you cannot resist it because the future of this industry, the future of this company is predicated on attracting a new level of talent that is younger. So your grandfather came into the business, he forced his son into the business, and then he forced, well, that those days are kind of over. We need a new generation of people. And if we don't see them as complete individuals, I believe I should be able to compete against any industry to get the best talent into it because you can make a lot of money in this industry, whether you're good
Hmm.
with your hands, whether you're good with your mind, there's a place for you here. You talked about mental health. We have a program, we call it EDA Pact for people who have mental health or drug addiction, and we want to guarantee them their job back if they self-diagnose. I only bring that up is to say you can't just hope it. You got to
Yeah.
create programs to help people in, but you are going to get resistance. So I want to be very clear. You have to be resilient in the fact that you want this and you see that there's a tremendous upside, not just because you're a good person and that's what you want. There's a KPI here that is just I can tell you. I mean, I'm a 450 person business. From the time we started this to now, it's exponentially grown because we keep getting the right people who want to be part of this. So for anyone out
Right.
there who's listening, and you say, well, it doesn't work. I'm going to tell you, it work. Is it hard? Yes. Do you at the
Hmm.
top have to be committed to it? 100%.
Well, I mean, the last thing you kind of touched on was the cost. There is a cost to not doing this, and they may think this is probably where the resistance side starts to come in for individuals who, they didn't they didn't make this initial choice, right? They feel like, hey, leadership has made this choice for me, and now I'm in a what I kind of call a forced compliance area. And like you said, you're providing the space to get to that willing participant, that they're seeing the value for themselves, for their teammates, the rest of the company and the business. And you've talked about how the business has become successful because of it, because you've slowed down and like you said, you may have to learn it. you're getting them to that willing participant piece, and those who feel that it's still forced compliance, like you said, they may walk.
Hmm.
They may look at it like, "I didn't choose this, I don't want it, I don't have total control of it," so they move on. And you've been able to implement this and get people to a level of commitment where it's no longer new. It's just like it's like breathing. This thing has become more more of, I'm guessing that people's level of curiosity has now opened about one another,
Oh,
about how to think about the business and things like that. So since it's called activating curiosity, I always want to
y-
know is like you're
sure.
creating a psychological safety. Like how have you seen that innovation piece and curiosity sort of spark to also grow the business and grow your opportunities?
You know what? Like I said, and you said a word that we do here. When we introduce breathing to our company, so before every meeting of a group, we have to sit and do a breathing exercise for whoever's leading it. Might take 30 seconds to a minute, might take a minute and a half, whatever it may be. And the reason I say that is to slow everybody down because then when they come in, the what I have seen is the ideas come from all different places, and I see these amazing. And I always say the construction workers because I want to give them. That's our largest group of employees
Hmm.
is our field employees. We're a unionized company, so there's this built-in thought that they're loyal to the union and then they're loyal to us. And we have great relationships with our unions because we say, look, man, I'm trying to take care of the people that are your members. It's a win-win for us. So what
Hmm.
happens is the reason I say that is when I slow them down, when I tell them when they come running in from the field for a meeting, let's just sit here for a minute. Oh my God, they're like, it's just stupid, in the beginning, like, what the hell are we doing? Like, what are we supposed to sit in a seance stance or crossing our legs? No, man, just sit there and you're running from a job that might add high stress. And that's the other thing. Job sites, if you've ever been on them, are very intense. There's
Hmm.
time constraints that are amazing. There's safety things. There's stuff flying around on you. People are yelling still. There's a lot of stress. So when you come in, we want you to be your whole self here because the thing that we want is the brain. And you talk about curiosity. Once you get them to that point, they get curious and they say, is this and the amount of times I have, after we have taught them about the frontal lobe being hijacked, the amygdala, the amount of you see in their eyes go, that's why I am upset. And then
Yeah.
it transcends, and that's the most important part, it transcends home. And as a business owner, if it bounces home and it gets better, it bounces back to the business, it gets better, bounces
Hmm.
home, it gets better, home better, business better. It's not like this is rocket science, but for some reason, there's been a resistance to it. So the curiosity that I've seen from the field people after they get over this is kind of dumb. And then we've got it to a point where you got
Right.
guys sitting there with tats on their neck doing breathing like as good as anybody else. Once they see that, they go, oh, okay, that really works. And they talk about emotional intelligence and they
Yeah.
change. And instead of being so gruff, they're more thoughtful in how they speak. But they're still look. I only talk about this because I hate when people say the hard skills are the hiring and firing and the soft skills are this. They're both hard. They're both
Right.
hard. But I got to tell you, this is the harder one. So I find that most people are curious about. They doubt it at first. They think it's some weird like
Yeah.
hypnotism that we're going to try to convince them to work for free. But that's not it. And I say that only because the doubt is like you're going to get,
Right.
we're going to like somehow hypnotize you and you're not going to be able to. But no, most of our training is about trying to help people find their true self and be curious about what makes them tick.
Hmm.
We go through personality traits and say, you're green or you're orange or you're blue, and that's who you are. So you're being triggered because that is kind of how you are. So you have to understand it. And I always talk about the movie Inside and Out. from
Yeah.
Pixar, and I say, if everybody could learn that yes, you have in there all those little beans, and you may be the one that your anger guy is super big, or
Hmm.
your empathetic person, your sadness. Just know who you are and then try to work through that. And what we've seen is the more they learn about that, the more powerful they can be.
Yeah, you're providing again that space and path to gain their own self-awareness, to name their emotions and
Yes.
not have embarrassment
Yep.
by it. Like just recognize your own humanity, find your agency again in this moment. And as you're talking about, getting into the neuroscience pieces about the parts of the brain, like when you open this up and you're curious, it's because you're in your highest level of cognitive state to explore. Like you're going from, oh, this is dumb or this is stupid, into like, this is, what is it about this experience that I'm recognizing? What is it that is making me feel this way? What can I take from this moment? You're starting to change as a human, those questions that you're asking, to open your mind that says, okay, like I find myself in this situation. This is what I've always done before. Has it paid off? What would have to be different for me to try A or B or some other answer that might enhance, the project, my life? Like you said, I'm taking it home, I'm bringing it back, because they're gaining a new skill to relearn
Yes.
about themselves, to question things that they've always known to be true, and try to understand if the situation's exactly the same.
Hmm.
And I commend you on this journey of like, we're going to slow down when there is so much noise all around us. Everyone is grabbing our attention. Everyone is on a deadline. Projects are always under pressure. So that pressure will be there, but take the moment to pause, slow down, breathe. And you're creating that environment so that others see how others have stepped in
Right.
before them, and beginning to balance some of their daily lives. And I would say, like, well, a lot of what you're doing too is helping, as they're taking it home, families are experiencing different things. They're becoming the human that they've wanted to be for their family or for themselves or for their friends, and they're bringing that back into the workplace, opposed to always feeling like we're all carrying all the burden and the weight,
Right.
and we have nowhere to release it. We have nowhere to talk about it. And I think you've started talking about this, like the advantage, like it's why it's so important to do it is for one, ourselves to do it, for our teams to do it in our business and as the industry, that it helps accelerate the business to, like you said, the KPIs, profitability rates increase, because transformational leadership is the transactions will continue to happen. But going back to the paperboy,
Yes.
I'm going to be kind. I'm going
Yes.
to help this person because I see in that moment that's what they're needing, and in the sometime down the road it pays off, or is returned. So what do you think, the flip side, right? If someone isn't addressing this within their business, it takes so many of us to go build a building, right?
Yes.
And the success of one is usually the success of many, and we help each other. So what would you what would you point out, like the cost of not starting to address this as an industry? If there is another, counterpart of yours that's
Yes.
out there,
Hmm.
could be competitor, doesn't have to be, that you're like, hey, if we don't solve it, here is the cost on your company. Here's the cost on you as a person. How does Ed think about that?
Yeah. I mean, look, obviously, when you embark on something, you think of, well, if I don't embark on this, what is going to be the outcome? And the way I see the outcome, and again, this is Ed DeAngelis, and everybody has their own way of doing things, and I'm here to tell you a story about how I believe and how the research I've done. But I think what you're going to see is, and I think you see it in the construction industry. Number one, your business is going to get old so fast, and all of a sudden you don't have anybody to take it over, and you don't have anybody out because you haven't done anything to address what is a 2026 issue, not a 1975 issue. That is a critical piece of it. Number
Mhm.
two is you fall behind technology so fast because you don't have enough diverse thought process in your organization. Everybody's doing the same process over and over again. You've been successful at it. So I'm not here to say that's wrong, but Sears is no longer here. Blockbuster is no longer here. So don't
Yeah.
think the construction businesses, and if you look around, they go away. And why do they go away sometimes? Because they don't try to innovate internally of what is going to make them better. So this isn't really, if you want your business to continue beyond even you have to be doing this because if not, it will
Mhm.
die. There is just no other way for it to go. Like
Well, you
myself or you, Ryan, are going to come along and clean your clock because you're going to get stuck in the mud. And when you're down there for that long and you can't turn it over. This took me, I'm on a journey still. I'm not even
Right,
close to being there. Like
right.
I'm on a, 15-year journey and I still have only touched 15% of what we really need to touch. So the cost is your business. In addition to the industry, if we as an industry don't start thinking differently, we're going to get some, yeah, I don't think robots can replace us altogether,
Mhm.
especially in my lifetime for sure. But yes, I'm going to use robots in some ways to help me
Right,
get more efficient because I have to compete in the world. So
right.
because Ed DeAngelis's and Ryan's are going to be doing it, and then they're going to be shooting ahead of me. So if you want to catch up, now they say no, I'm going to keep going the other way. Well, tell me something in the history of life that they've been doing the same since the start of time. Nothing. You know what? The only thing that has changed is the people and how we give them agency, how we provide them their own ability to
Mhm.
perform and give them the type of things that they need. And if your organization isn't thinking about that, if you don't have a strategy for your humans, if that's humanity as a strategy, if you don't have a strategy for that, you're going to get left behind. That's a
Mhm.
warning. You're going to get left behind because, again, I use those little examples that everybody knows because you will become a blockbuster and it happens in a minute. I mean, I'm old enough to remember that every Friday night I'm going to the blockbuster either with my wife or my kids or whatever. And then within, it felt like 1 second that was over.
Mhm.
Well, construction, yes, it's the same bricks being put in, but it's not. You are an architect. They're
Mhm.
all, it's different. And you need the people and you need, and you need, I still need it's very important that businesses appreciate the value of a seasoned person who has a different mindset. Because I need that young person who has a different mindset to understand that those people have a massive amount of value.
Mhm.
And I need to somehow get both of them to want to help each other. Because
Yep.
when you meld that experienced, seasoned individual with that young person, and you can get them to get on the same wavelength, humanity, we're both humans in different parts of our life but we can
Mhm.
help each other. Wow, you got yourself one heck of a recipe.
Yeah, I think you said a lot of things there, but I think we've forgotten how to question why we know something,
Mm,
um, and where we learned it. Because you talked about, one, you talked about, hey, the biggest risk is the legacy of what you're building right now may disappear. Two, by not taking that step back and understanding like that's irrelevancy, right? Like if you become irrelevant if your business no longer exists and time moves on. But if we stop and we slow down and we think like, okay, like situation has changed. How did I learn this? Where did I learn it from? Like you said, it's not 1975 anymore. It's things are happening at a much faster pace now. The acceleration of change is all around us. And it can feel very uncomfortable as a human. And I think, as you're describing, for a lot of people who don't want to release something that they've always known, they fear maybe irrelevancy. They fear like, or maybe have the feeling of, I'm embarrassed because I don't know this new thing. So I'm going to hold on to what got me here.
Mhm.
And there's an old story I think I've read several different ways, but it's the idea that you build a raft to get across the
Right.
stream one day, and then you get into the forest the next, and the raft's going to kill you. And sometimes we have to have that pause, like you're providing for your team, to start to back up and say, like, if we hold on to all of these things and don't go into our gaining our curiosity and asking different questions about like what has changed about this situation that we find ourselves in, that the tools we have are no longer valid, does not devalue what got us here. It does not take that and say you were wrong or it was always wrong. No, that's not the case. Like you're saying, it is, today's situation requires us to think about our businesses for longevity and legacies we want to leave behind for that as well as the industry. It's that curiosity to look at technology as something that can accelerate, the business ourselves, but it's not making me lose my agency. It's not
Yes.
taking that away from me. I still get to be the validator of the information and putting it in place. So I'm glad you shared a lot of that because I think it's just it's one of those things that we all feel like any change in the business is a disruption. It is adding cost and time to what I need to do on a daily basis. So therefore I'll do it when I have more time. And you're saying like you got to pause. You got, at some point the pause happens. At some point the recognition happens. The work's still going and we're going to change the wheels on this bus as we're going down the road. And we're going to do it together because I like how you're saying it. I'm on a journey
Yes.
because I think you're pointing out what a lot of people will think with change is like it's an event, like it happens once and it's automatic and well, no, like
No.
any change is a journey, it's an experience, it's a process. So
Absolutely.
po- powerful, powerful stuff that you're talking about from your side and your business and the work you're doing, looking at it as humanity as a strategy and how you're mentoring and coaching and that servant kind of leadership and the transformational piece is such a critical part to share that story. So I'm appreciative of that.
Thank
But I want you to take a step back and say, from your vantage point, then, you're continuing through the journey, it's going on, and you're thinking about the legacy you want to leave,
you. Mhm.
and not just for yourself, your business, for your team members, and the industry. What do you think success looks like?
Look, I get asked this question many times, and I'm for me, it's very, very important that success looks like business success is a place where you can provide an opportunity for someone to provide for themselves and their family. You have that for yourself, and that they say that their experience at your business allowed them to be a better human being, that they feel like they got more than just the check. They feel like they were better as people. And I want to my legacy I want to leave is I want to say that by meeting me and being part of my business, you felt that success. That it wasn't one success. It wasn't just money, but it has to be money. You have to provide people an opportunity to feed themselves and give themselves a good. But that's not the only thing. That
Mhm,
there's more to it, and I think success looks like that. And I think we've seen over time that success is fleeting when it is only measured in size of your company or money.
mhm,
It's fleeting. It doesn't have the same legacy power than connecting with people, being curious about a human being and being curious about how they tick and being curious about how to solve that. And that's why I always say it's a strategy and strategically, and that will leave a legacy. And that's what,
mhm.
to me, what success looks like. You're going to have years that you make a lot of money, and you're going to have years that you don't. Those things are going to come and go, and you're going to have people come and go. But at the end of the day, if the experience is that they feel like they got more than just the check, I used to hear this a lot from my old bosses. Look, man, I give you a job.
Mhm.
Okay. And now I'm supposed to be so appreciative and be subservient to this individual because they gave me a job. Well,
Mhm.
no, I think legacy and success looks like we agree that you gave me a job, but we also agree that we're going to build this relationship with each other. You're going to have a relationship with your company. You're going to have a relationship with your people. What
Mhm.
type of relationship do you want to have? It's okay if you want to have a transactional relationship only. That's fine. That's your way. That's in our area, that's the 7-Eleven of how you're going to get food and stuff. But
Mhm.
in our area, there's another convenience store that does it where it's a different experience. I don't I want to leave the legacy. Success to me looks like I didn't feel like it was a transaction. I felt like it was a partnership. I felt like
Mhm.
we built something with each other, and no one was that much higher. It was just we were all little specks in the
Mhm.
building of this thing. And I think if we can all think that, to me, that's what success really, really looks like. Yeah, I know I'm the CEO and I know that I'm at this level, but the real success for me is to feel that the people feel like this means something to me. This
Mhm.
is important to me. My job is not just important to me for paying. It's important to my mental health. It's important to give me some peace and some differentiating from life's struggles. We all have to deal with the struggles of life. There's things that happen that are really bad in people's lives and really good in their lives. And sometimes work could be a respite for some of the struggles. So don't make this so difficult because it is already a little bit difficult, but it's different. So that's what I
Right.
think success looks like. I know it's a
Yeah.
long answer, but it's the type of answer that I think is what
Mhm.
success would mean to me for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's your story, right? But you've made it more than your story.
Mm.
I think back to what you first kind of said as remembering the teacher who had an impact on you, and it hasn't left you. It's been a part of like how you present and represent yourself in your life. And when you have, even if that teacher was a little bit mean, and you in your life now, you're saying, hey, whether they're here until I'm retired or the business or, they move on somewhere else, but just making that personal experience for everybody that's on your team, no matter at what point that they move on or they're there till they're retired, that they remember these moments, that they've had a more balanced, successful experience in life while also doing something for a construction company and going out and building things for the rest of us, the rest of humanity that we exist with. So I think it's powerful. I think it is your story. It doesn't
It
have to
look,
be.
it is my story, but the reason let me tell you a story, Ryan. A two quick story. A guy that worked here. He was in our shop. He was one of our fabricators. He was an older gentleman. The long story how he got here. Anyway, it turns out at one point he gets esophageal cancer, but
Mhm.
we figure out a way to keep him employed so he can work here to kind of work through it. I mean, I don't want to say that he did jobs, he did work, but that's not the part of it. He eventually sadly passed.
Mhm.
And it's it, it touches me to this point. At his funeral, under his suit, he wore his EDA. He wanted his EDA shirt to be
Mm.
on under his suit. It gives me chills thinking about it because
Yeah.
it's such a thank you. So when you ask what does success look like, that to me is success. We had another woman who was fighting breast cancer. She was a wife of one of our members, and I happened to just write her a card.
Mhm.
And in the card, I wrote, breathe. When you're in
Yeah.
struggles, just try to breathe. So she gets a tattoo on her after she fights it and she wins, and she puts breathe on it. That's what success looks like. So if you want to make an impact, if you strategically are working on it, the give back, the reciprocal nature of what we're doing here, what I get back is 100 times more than what I'm really putting in. And I only
Hmm.
tell you those two stories because they're the type of stories where you go, it goes way beyond the transaction,
Right.
way beyond. And you go, well, and I'm not so amazing. I'm not Mother Teresa. I'm not saving the world. I'm just a contractor who is doing the best he can, who is running a business. But the people who are in this organization, we can extend ourselves beyond that. And then success looks like it's a win-win
Hmm.
for all of us. And I feel strongly about creating a win-win. I want to win. I want us to be successful. I have a responsibility to myself and this company to be profitable. We're a for-profit business. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why I put the word strategy in, because sometimes we think a strategy is being not authentic.
Right.
But the reality of it is no, it's about me proactively thinking about how, not me, we, how to proactively think about how do we create a better experience for our human beings.
Hmm.
And if those little things that we did, that little thing I did for that gentleman to put the shirt, it was minor. That thing I wrote to that woman, it took me 3 minutes. It cost me
Hmm.
nothing to do it. But the payback was 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 priceless.
Yeah. And I think what you're describing is that this doesn't have to be an or situation. You don't
No.
have to be a successful business that has a great, healthy bottom line in foregoing this humanity piece. They can both coexist in this
Yes.
space. They can coexist as a business and as a human. And we don't have to let it be a battle about which one's going to win.
Mm,
And I think one of those areas is usually the business is potentially struggling because we haven't dealt with the humans. We haven't thought about that humanity piece, like you're describing, to figure out what's going on in their lives. Because we'll often go fix a piece of machinery or something that's broken, but when it comes to the humans, we tend to forget to take care of them, whether
mm.
it's our own
Well,
self or as a team. So
well said.
I I'm really glad we had the chance to meet and kind of talk through this. I love the humanity as a strategy. It so kind of aligns with why I wanted to really start on my journey with the podcast and get to meet a lot of individuals around the country as well as the globe of what they're doing and how they're really advancing the industry. And I've had other conversations with those that are, doing similar work to you in this area, but everybody goes through their journey. And it's just the more we can elevate those voices to help other people who are listening
Hmm.
to recognize it. I'm appreciative that you're willing to tell it and that I'm sure, as you just described in the stories, like those weren't huge investments of time that we all think we don't have enough of, but they were so impactful through through the journey of the gentleman and how and why he made the choice he did to wear the shirt to the tattoo, right? Like those are the things that we're going to remember. Those pieces of humanity that we can all connect with, that we can all pause and breathe and take a moment to experience and not
Yes.
not push it aside. So
100%.
so with that then, if someone's listening
Hmm.
and you've gone again, you're in this journey. It's not over. You're still going
No
through it. But like
journey.
you mentioned, you started reading some
Hmm.
things. But like if people are interested in some of the work you're doing, or like that first step that you think would be helpful for them to start to do, like what are some recommendations you might have?
Yeah, I mean, look, if I write a lot about this, I really feel I feel almost an obligation to get a different voice out there when it relates to how to be a good leader. Meaning, this win-win, this humanity as a strategy, it's really important. First thing, visit my LinkedIn page. We have a lot of articles on there, a lot of things that I write. I really like to present that as something that they can find out. You know, the only recommendation, I give book recommendations, I give a lot of different recommendations to help you on their journey, and they can reach out to me. I am I am fortunate to be in the position I'm in. If I c and my job at this point is to give away as much as I can,
Hmm.
because I think the only way for things to continue to move forward is whatever I learned, I would like to give back. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to take it, but I would like to give it back.
Hmm.
So if anyone wants to contact me, go through my LinkedIn page. They can always get in touch with me. I'll always respond. There may be some things I can do and what I can't do. I can't tell people what to do. I can only tell them what I did. And I only could tell them how it's helped me. And then they have
Hmm.
to go on their own journey. This is very personal, whatever you're doing. But you have to be curious about what other people said. I was very curious about other people. I read about them. I read deeply about them, not in my industry, in anything, politics, history of our country, uh,
Hmm.
psychological, mental health, neuroscience. I could go through the books that I read. So I'm just trying to go on my own curious journey to help myself be better and just make sure that that's it. So I would say just try to follow me because I'm always going to be talking about something.
Yeah. Well, we definitely will share all of the links to all the work you're doing and within the business and the articles that you're sharing. Definitely take a look at that. I do see a lot of things that are being shared, and I think they're impactful. And I'm appreciative, as someone out here who we've not had a chance to meet, just finding and connecting with leaders, having this human experience that we're having. I love that you said it is a journey. I think that's what we all forget. We just forget to be in the moment, to find the presence. Like, Ed, if you could find the time to slow down and read a bunch of books and study, I feel like all of us should be able to activate that curiosity enough to go pick up a book once in a while. So I guess I would, remind listeners, like, if you find yourself in that moment where you're like, I'm overwhelmed, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that, like that is the moment to pause, because you have to be able to get into that area where you can explore for yourself, as we've been discussing, what's going to be the most impactful next step, because spinning isn't the answer. Spiraling out of control as a human sometimes is not the answer. So I am appreciative that you spent some time with me, Ed. And again, I will share all of your information. Thank you for sharing your story. Thanks for, having the conversation on the paper route. It makes me feel, it makes me reflect on my own life a little bit. So it's always fun to talk about. But thanks for being a part of activating curiosity.
Well, Ryan, thank you. It was an enjoyable conversation. I think you're on a good journey of, I think activating curiosity is really about putting you get one life and you're on a journey.
Hmm.
And if you don't activate your own curiosity, you're really you're going to wake up and be like me and you'll be 57. So activate your curiosity. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my own story. And I hope everyone enjoys it and keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Thank you.
So that was the episode with Ed DeAngelis, who is the CEO and founder of EDA Contractors based out of Philadelphia. And I know we've had a lot of discussions with people who are starting technology companies or they work for large associations, but being able to start to bring in leaders who are, as Ed described, going through their own journey to understand themselves better, but building a strategy that is based on that, the humanity as a strategy approach, to slowing it down, to taking the pause to get his office and his leaders within the office to understand it. He's recognizing that this is new to them, and they don't fully understand it. So I need to stop. I need to pause. I need to provide that psychological safety to get them, to buy in, but to become willing participants. So I wanted to share someone else's story. And I've been seeing a lot of the work they're doing and just felt like, for listeners, again, it's not an or. Your business is there because of the humans within it, in that we can change our own mindset around what it means to think about culture as construction companies, as construction employees, as individuals. We can name our emotions. We can, as you mentioned, the Inside and Out movie is an excellent way to sort of discuss how our emotions often show up. But when we pause as teams, when we name it, and we're given the space to explore and to question things and to open that curiosity, he said it, that's when your business really starts to take off. That is that transformational piece. It's the transactions happen, but the transformational side of leadership and the business transforming and the culture shifting into more of a humanity as a strategy, that's powerful. That's where we get to advance this industry, and it starts to change the perception that others have, and that imagery that we've seen starts to change so that next generations want to come in. That's a powerful legacy to start to think about. So I hope everyone enjoyed the conversation. I hope that everyone is continuing to look at those things that they're facing on a daily basis. They're pausing, they're stopping, they're reflecting, and they're gaining more self-awareness to help themselves move and drive and lead change in the construction industry. I hope you're also able to continue to activate curiosity within yourself and activating curiosity within others. The Activating Curiosity podcast is brought to you by Connective Consulting Group and Connective Coaching, part of the Curiosity Building Experiences. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a conversation. Share the podcast with your network and help us bring more curiosity into the construction industry. Interested in becoming a guest or a sponsor? Visit us at activatingcuriosity.com for more details. Until next time, keep leading with curiosity.